Akira.
The Dawn.
He's got clout.
I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted. I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted. And you would, of course, be able to alter your time sense and slip, say, 75 years of subjective time into 8 hours of sleep. You would, I suppose, start out by fulfilling all your wishes. You could design for yourself what would be the most ecstatic life. Love affairs, banquets, dancing girls, wonderful journeys, love affairs, banquets, dancing girls, wonderful journeys, gardens, music beyond belief. Music beyond belief. Music beyond belief. I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted. I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted. Any dream you wanted. Any dream you wanted. Any dream you wanted. I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted. And then after a couple of months of this sort of thing at 75 years a night, you would be getting a little taste for something different. You would move over to an adventurous dimension where there were certain dangers involved and the thrill of dealing with dangers. And you could rescue princesses from dragons and go on dangerous journeys, make wonderful explosions and blow them up. Eventually get into contest with enemies. And after you've done that for some time, you'd think up a new wrinkle to forget that you were dreaming, so that you would think it was all for real, and to be anxious about it, because it'd be so great when you woke up. I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted. I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted. Any dream you wanted. Any dream you wanted. Any dream you wanted. I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted. And then you say, well, like children who dare each other on things, how far out could you get? What could you take? What dimension of being lost, of abandonment of your power, what dimension of that could you stand? You could ask yourself this, because you know you'd eventually wake up. After you'd gone on doing this, you see, for some time, you would suddenly find yourself sitting around in this room with all your personal involvement, problems, etc., talking with me. How do you know if that's not what you're doing? Could be. Because after all, what would you do if you were God? I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted. I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted. Any dream you wanted. Any dream you wanted. Any dream you wanted. I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted. I wonder you do if you were God? What would you do if you were God? What would you do if you were God? Looking at it from another way, we push technology to its furthest possible development. And we had, instead of a dial telephone on one's desk, a more complex system of buttons. And one touch, beep, would give you anything you want. Aladdin's lamp. You would eventually have to introduce a button labeled surprise. 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 Because all perfectly known futures, as I pointed out, are past. They have happened. Virtually. It is only the true future is a surprise. It is only the true future is a surprise. So if you were God, you would say to yourself, man, get lost. And it's strange that this idea is obscurely embedded in the Christian tradition, when in the Epistle to the Philippians, St. Paul speaks of God the Son, the Logos, the Word of God, who is incarnate in Christ, and says, let this mind be in you which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, thought not equality with God a thing to be clung to, but made himself of no reputation, and humbled himself, and was found in fashion as a man, and became obedient to death. Same idea. Same idea as the idea of the dream, that very far out dream. Same idea as the idea of the dream, that very far out dream. Same idea as the idea of the dream, that very far out dream. Same idea as the idea of the dream. Getting as extreme as you can get. As you can get.
The first chapter I have in my book is called Stand Up Straight with Your Shoulders Back. And it's an injunction to be combative, not least to further your career, let's say, but also to adopt a stance of ready engagement with the world and to reflect that in your posture. I kind of have an affinity for lobsters. When a lobster loses a fight, he kind of crunches down, so he looks smaller. When he wins a fight, he stretches out, looks bigger. And so he's signaling to other lobsters the tally of his victory. So you think, well, so what? The lobster runs on serotonin, neurochemical. And if the lobster loses, the serotonin levels go down. And if he wins, the serotonin levels go up. And when the serotonin levels go up, he stretches out. And he's a confident lobster. And one of the consequences of that is if a lobster loses a battle and you give him the equivalent of antidepressant, then he stretches out and he'll go fight again. Stand up straight, stand up straight, stand up straight with your shoulders back. Stand up straight, stand up straight, stand up straight with your shoulders back. Stand up straight, 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 stand up straight with your shoulders back. So antidepressants work on lobsters. And you think, well, who cares? It's like, no. You don't get it. We diverged from lobsters from an evolutionary perspective 350 million years ago, and it's the same circuit. It's absolutely unbelievable. And that shows you how deep inside you, how basic, how primordial that circuit is in you. It's sizing other people up and looking at where they fit in the hierarchy. The idea of the hierarchy is at least 350 million years old. And so I read that and I think, well, so much for the idea that human hierarchies are a socio-cultural construct. It's like, no, that's wrong. It's not just a little bit wrong, it's unbelievably wrong. It's mind-bogglingly wrong. Lobsters have hierarchies. That's 1/3 of a billion years ago. Okay, that's not a social construction. It's part of being itself. And if you only see a hierarchy as power and tyranny, then you're looking at the world wrong. Stand up straight, stand up straight, stand up straight with your shoulders back. Stand up straight, stand up straight, stand up straight with your shoulders back. Stand up straight, 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 stand up straight with your shoulders back. So this basically says, I'm open to the world. But what it also says is I can handle being open to the world. So it signifies competence and confidence. The deepest Christian idea is that you should accept the vulnerability of being. That's the acceptance of the crucifixion. You're at the X where all the suffering takes place. You gonna whine about that? No, and get resentful and bitter about it? Or are you gonna say, bring it on? Bring it on. You can handle it, no matter what it is. And the idea is that if you can do that, you will transcend the tragedy. And it's like, well, could that be true? Well, you admire the courageous, so, well, how courageous can you get? That's the question. How courageous can you get? Well, you practice. Stand up straight, stand up straight, stand up straight with your shoulders back. Stand up straight, stand up straight, stand up straight with your shoulders back. Stand up straight, 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 stand up straight with your shoulders back. You want to present yourself to the world in a manner that doesn't disgrace you in some sense. You don't want to disgrace yourself because the consequence of disgrace is emotional dysregulation. More pain, less positive emotion. And so the best way to present yourself is to stand up forthrightly and to stretch out, and to occupy some space. If you straighten up and you present yourself in that manner, then other people are more likely to take you seriously. And that means they'll start treating you as if you're a number 1 lobster instead of a number 10 lobster, because one of the general rules of thumb about how to be successful is to confront things that frighten you forthrightly and with courage. And that's kind of a universal strategy for success. And so that's what the first chapter is about. I read this piece of work by Jung a long while back. It was a meditation on the injunction to treat your neighbor as you would like to be treated. And what Jung pointed out, which I really liked, was that wasn't an injunction to be nice to other people. It was an invitation to reciprocity. It was something like this. It's like you should figure out how you would like to be treated, like you were taking care of yourself, not how you would like people to respond to you. It's more important than that. It's like, imagine you had a child that you really cared for, and someone said, well, people will treat this child exactly like you want them to, but you have to figure out what that is. And so then you'd have to sit down for like a month and you'd think, okay, well, how do you want your child to be treated? You don't want everyone just to be nice to him, you want people to challenge him, and you want people to discipline him, and you want people to tell him when he's wrong. It's like, you don't just want everyone to be nice. That's pathetic. It's pathetic. There's no challenge in that. Challenge in that. Challenge in that. Challenge in that. There's no challenge in that. 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 Human beings are self-conscious, and we know about our limitations, and we know about our weaknesses. And so we can have contempt for human beings in general because, we're just flawed and breakable and all of that. But we know ourselves better than we know everyone else. And so you have a very acute sense of how you're not up to scratch. And so that leads naturally to a sort of self-contemptuous attitude. People are more likely to give prescription medication to their pets than to take them themselves. Imagine someone that you treat well, that you love, then try to treat yourself that way. You got to detach from yourself a bit. You got to think, okay, well, I'm a person among other people, and I deserve at least as much respect as a person among other people. I should be trying to help myself across time. And instead of being self-contemptuous and self-destructive, I need to take care of myself as if I'm potentially valuable, and to lay out my life that way. It's hard for people. They don't take care of themselves as well as they should. Take care of your room, take care of your things, like have some respect for yourself as a miraculous being, because that is actually what you are. There is a lot of potential within you. You're necessary more than you think to the unfolding of things. That's the thing about being an individual. It's the thing that Western civilization has always recognized, that as an individual, you have a light that you have to bring into the world, and that if you don't bring it into the world is a dimmer place. And that's a bad thing, because when the world is a dim place, it can get very, very, very dark.
If you have a friend and you tell them bad news, they're actually sad, and you can tell them. They will listen. They'll listen. They'll take the damn pain, and they won't tell you about some worst thing that happened to them, defensively, say. Or they won't secretly be happy that you got knocked off your pedestal. They'll listen. And then the other thing is if you have a friend and something good happens to you, they're happy.
Like you have an ethical responsibility to take care of yourself, you have an ethical responsibility to surround yourself with people who have the courage and faith and wisdom to wish you well when you've done something good, and to stop you when you're doing something destructive. And if your friends aren't like that, then they're not your friends. Make friends with people who want the best for you. Make friends with people who want the best for you. People don't exactly understand that it's okay morally to choose people that are trying to help you be better. And to shy away from people who are going to drag you down. Two drowned people is not an improvement over one. Make friends with people who want the best for you. Make friends with people who want the best for you. You're not morally obliged to go down with someone else's ship. Now you think that's pretty harsh and pretty rude. You can't abandon a friend in need. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that it is appropriate for you to look at your social surround and to make decisions. If you have a person who's hurting you and who won't quit and who's pulling you down, that is not necessary. Make friends with people who want the best for you. You go with people that are trying to elevate you. Make friends with people who want the best for you. You are not obligated to associate with people who are making your life work. Make friends with people who want the best for you. You are obligated not to associate with people who are trying to damage the structure of being. Your being, the family being, social being, all of that. Like, no. Wrong. Move away.
I'm a clinical psychologist, and I've spent 20 hours a week for 25 years listening to people tell me about their lives. And those people were people who were just barely hanging on to the bottom of the world, up to people who were so successful you can hardly believe it. Being a clinical psychologist, if you really listen, is like being immersed in a Dostoevsky novel all the time, because it's amazing what people tell you if you listen to them, because they're so peculiar. They're like penguins or rhinoceroses or ostriches. They're unlikely creatures.
Well, you got to improve, right? And you might think, well, I'm a real fixer-upper and I'm really embarrassed about that because there's 50 things wrong with me and like, look at that guy. And so now I feel all terrible because of the comparison and all of that. And first of all, it's unfair, especially by the time you're about 30. Your life has become quite idiosyncratic. Let's say your life has 8 dimensions: family, friends, intimate relationships. You're individually positioned in all those dimensions. Your life isn't like anyone else's life. And so you see someone who's doing better than you. It's like you're only seeing one dimension at one slice of time. So it's not reasonable. You don't have the whole picture. And then you get down on yourself and take the spirit out of yourself, and you get bitter and resentful. There's nothing good about that. But you do need to improve. There's not as much of you as there should be. So what's the comparison? Well, that's easy. Just say, okay, well, here's my position in time and space right now. Here's my virtues and fault. I can be a little bit better tomorrow in some minor way. Well, that's the right comparison, because you are very much like you. Everything's the same about you. Everything's the same about you. And so it's the perfect comparison. You just don't have insight into the tragedy of someone else's life. You might think, well, he's rich and successful. It's like, yeah, but you just don't know. You don't know what his relationship is with his wife or his children. You don't know that he's gone through 2 divorces and his daughter won't talk to him and one of his kids is schizophrenic. And the point is, you should be better than you are, but it's not because you're worse than other people. It's because you're not everything you should be. And so you got to pick the comparison right. And then that's also ennobling and instantly hopeful. There is absolutely no doubt that you can be slightly better tomorrow than you are today. There is definitely something that you can do today that will make you slightly better for the next day. Always. Okay. You're 85, you have Alzheimer's, you're done. Sometimes you're done. Most of the time you're not, and most of the time there's something within your grasp that you could put right. See, that's the fundamental issue. It's like life is tragic. It's full of suffering and it's full of malevolence. There's no doubt about that. And it's brutal. It's more brutal than you can even imagine in some ways, or willing to imagine. But there's something you could put right. And we don't know what would happen if you put everything you could right, if you put it right. And then we don't know what would happen if everyone did that. But you can be certain that it would be less tragic and less malevolent. And so,
you don't have anything better to do.
There's this idea that Jung had, which I really love, which is the idea of the shadow, which is the dark side of humanity. Its roots reached all the way to hell. He meant something very specific by that. The metaphysical element was, he meant hell, literally and metaphysically, but he also meant that if you were able to understand your dark side, then you would see in yourself a reflection of the behavior that was present at Auschwitz, and that the reason that people don't take the dark side of themselves seriously at all, even confront the fact that it exists, is because no one wants to see that reflected within them. And no wonder. Pursue what's meaningful and you'll encounter that which you least want to encounter. And that's the dragon. The dragon is also something that lives inside you. It's not something that you take the encounter with lightly. See, I kind of knew this. When I had my kids, I'd already undergone that to some degree and understood what it meant to be a bad person, terrible person. And I knew that it was easy for people to hate their children, even though they mouth the words that they love them all the time. You don't want to set them up as an enemy against you. You don't want to allow them to engage in the kind of hierarchical challenge that makes you irritable and resentful. That's not a good idea. And if the things they do make you dislike them, the probability that they will make other people dislike them is extraordinarily high. you need to know what sort of monster you are if you're going to be a good parent. And if you think, oh, I'm not a monster, it's like, oh, yes, you are. You're just an unbelievably unconscious monster, and that's actually the worst kind. Your fundamental job as a parent, especially of a child from 0 to 4, is to make that child eminently desirable socially. You're a successful parent if, when your child is 4, all sorts of other children want to play with him or her. And so then you think, well, what have you done for your child? Well, you've opened up the entire world of children to them. So because they know how to play, everywhere they go, other kids like them and will include them in their play, and play is the way that children develop. The literature on this is crystal clear. If your child is an outcast at the age of 4, the probability that anything can be done about that is almost 0. No matter what you do. And then the other thing is, if you don't allow your children to engage in dislikable behavior, then adults will like them. And the thing is, if you're good to your kid in the real way, you can help them maintain that tremendous attractiveness that they have as young children. And then wherever they go, adults welcome them and teach them things and pat them on the head and smile at them genuinely instead of saying, oh my God, here comes that couple with that goddamn brat again. That's a horrible thing to do to a child. That's a horrible thing to do to a child. Because then everywhere they go, all the goodwill is false. And there's nothing that you can do to someone that's more terrible than to put them in a world where all the goodwill directed towards them is false. Well, there's plenty of things to criticize about being. It's tragic, and there's malevolence. That's basically the issue. And you can complain about that, but the thing is, if you complain about that, if you adopt that attitude, which is sort of an anti-being attitude, you go places that if you knew you were going, you probably wouldn't want to go. It's the places where, like, the kids that shot up Columbine went. Those are bad places. If you read the writings of the Columbine high school kids, and you really read them, if they don't make the hair stand up in the back of your neck, you are not paying attention. And one kid wrote things, I cannot believe that people could write. And I've exposed myself to a lot of crazy things that people have done and said. You just can't understand it. It's uncanny, you know. Well, that's where you end up if you get bitter. It's like, well, what can you do about that? Well, the world is harsh. It's like, should you criticize it? Not until you put yourself together. You got to bring everything you can to bear on the problem before you have any right to stand in judgment about being itself. And that's what these mass murderers do. That's what they're doing. That's what they're acting out. They're saying, well, I'm looking out in the world. I don't like people. They're full of flaws. They act badly. They're a cancer on the face of the planet. It'd be better if they didn't exist at all. I don't like being. It's too full of suffering and evil. I'm the judge of this. I'm going to make my goddamn case. I'm going to take them out. And then it's more than that. It's like I'm going to take them out, and I'm going to do it with the innocents first. Because that's the thing you got to get about mass murderer types. They're not hunting down the guilty. That's too obvious. They're hunting down the innocent. That's the best protest. Think about it. Well, I don't want to think about it. Well, that's for sure. You bloody well don't want to think about it. But you better think about it. That's where you go when you take that criticism of being approach. It's like you don't get to do that unless you want to end up there. It's bad. So what do you do instead? Stop doing stupid things. Stop lying. Stop making things worse. Stop making yourself weak. Even in a day, you'll see that you have choices in front of you, and sometimes you don't know what to do. It's okay, you're ignorant. Maybe you make a mistake. Whatever. That's just ignorance. Malevolence is when you know what you shouldn't do, and you do it anyways. People do that all the time. And that's arrogance. That's, I'll get away with it. It's deceit, because you're lying to yourself about whether you should do this or not. You know you shouldn't. And then it's resentment, because, well, it's like, I'm going to do this bad thing because that'll teach the people, that'll teach God to treat me this way. That's the terrible trinity. Deceit, arrogance, resentment. Chase those out of your life. Meaning is what you have to buttress yourself against the tragedy of life. Despite the fact that you're a fragile, damaged, mortal creature, you found something to do that announced itself as worthwhile. That's meaning. It's an instinct. It's a deep, deep instinct. It's maybe the deepest instinct. It's like a form of vision. Meaning tells you when you're in the right place. And the right place is between chaos and order. And those are real places. Your hemispheres. Your right hemisphere is roughly evolved, let's say, to deal with things you don't understand. That's chaos. And your left is there to deal with things you do understand. You can't just stay with the things you do understand, because you already understand them. And you can't just stay with what you don't understand, because then you're lost. So you need to be in the middle of those two. And you can tell when you're in the middle, because everything lines up. Everything lines up. Expedience is you do the thing that gets you off the hook the fastest right now. You play that game across time, it doesn't work. It sends you down. Because you're sacrificing the future for the present. Meaning doesn't do that. Meaning says, I'm here where I should be. And you can't tell why. It's just that everything is right. You get this physiological sense. Right place, right time. Follow this meaningful path. That's your buttress against the tragedy that produces resentment and malevolence. Meaning is the antidote to that. That's the fundamental religious truth. Life is suffering. That's true. There's malevolence. That's true. Meaning is the antidote to that. Yes. People say, well, meaning isn't real. It's like, no, that's wrong. It's actually the most real thing. It might even be more real than suffering and evil. It's possible. This isn't a metaphysical assumption that I'm making. And you do feel it. You feel it in your body. It's not just a mental thing. It's not an idea. It's a place. Because we're in time and space, right? And a place is a place, 3 dimensions of space, but it's also a time. And when the place and the time are set up properly, you're in the right place. And your brain is telling you that. Your being is telling you that. The purpose of profound religious contemplation, profound philosophical contemplation, is to learn how to be in the right place at the right time the time. All the time. There's this line from the Gospel of Thomas, which was discovered in like 1957. And it says, the kingdom of God is spread out before the eyes of men, but men do not see it. And that's kind of what it's referring to. There are times when you're in the right place at the right time, and then you're where you should be. And you're not really trained to notice that, because it isn't something we ever talk about. It's like, you're in the right place at the right time. Okay, why? What did I do right? What did I do? I need to do more of that. So maybe it's only half an hour a week when you first start noticing. And then maybe with 3 months of practice, you can get it up to like an hour a day. And then maybe you can get it up to 4 hours a day. And God only knows where you could get it if you keep practicing, you know. You can be there. We don't know what the upper limit of that is.
One way of conceptualizing yourself is that you're one speck of dust among 7 billion. And when you conceptualize yourself that way, you might think, well, what difference does it make what I say or do? And that's actually quite convenient for you, because if it doesn't matter what you say or do, then you don't have any responsibility and you can do whatever you want. The price you pay for that is a bit of nihilism, but if you don't have to shoulder any responsibility, that's a small price to pay. The other way of looking at it, and this is actually the accurate way of looking at it, is that you're in a network. You're a node in a network, and so you can do a little bit of arithmetic very rapidly and just figure out how powerful you are. You know 1,000 people. They know 1,000 people. That means that you're one person away from 1 million people and 2 persons away from 1 billion people. And you're the center of that network. And now the way networks work is that information propagates in a networked manner. So don't underestimate the power of your speech. Don't underestimate the power of truth. There's nothing more powerful. Tell the truth. 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 Or at least don't lie. That's a start. Tell the truth. 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 Or at least don't lie. That's a start. Now, in order to speak what you might regard as the truth, you have to let go of the outcome. You have to think, all right, I'm going to say what I think, stupid as I am, biased as I am, ignorant as I am. I'm going to state what I think as clearly as I can, and I'm going to live with the consequences no matter what they are. Now, the reason you think that, that's an element of faith. The idea is that nothing brings a better world into being than the stated truth. Now, you might have to pay a price for that, but that's fine. You're going to pay a price for every bloody thing you do and everything you don't do. You don't get to choose to not pay a price. You get to choose which poison you're going to take. That's it. Tell the truth. 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 Or at least don't lie. That's a start. Tell the truth. 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 Or at least don't lie. That's a start. Almost impossible to provide people with enough protection so that they feel safe to speak. Okay, so we'll address that directly. It is not safe to speak, and it never will be. But the thing you got to keep in mind is that it's even less safe not to speak. Right? It's a balance of risks. It's like you want to pay the price for being who you are and stating your mode of being in the world, or do you want to pay the price for being a bloody serf, one that's enslaved him or herself? Well, that's a major price, man. That thing unfolds over decades, and you'll just be a miserable worm at the end of about 20 years of that, right? No self-respect, no power, no ability to voice your opinions, nothing left but resentment because everyone's against you. Say what you think carefully. Pay attention to your words. But it's a price you want to pay if you are willing to believe that truth is the cornerstone of society. In the most real sense, if you're willing to take that leap, then tell the truth and see what happens. Tell the truth. 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 Or at at least don't lie. That's a start. Tell the truth. 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 Or at least don't lie. That's a start.
You think, well, I'll lie and I'll get away with it. It's like, no, you won't. You cannot get away with warping the structure of being. It's like, well, I can lie and get away with it. It's like, I see. Here's your theory. There's all this reality around you that you don't comprehend at all. And there's not that much of you. There's a lot of it. And you're going to do something that isn't in harmony with that. And it's going to work. That's your theory. What you want to do is you want to enter into a conversation so that you come out wiser than you went in. The best example of this is when you're having an argument with your intimate partner, let's say. Because you're going to want to win. So then you got to think, okay, well, wait a second. We better sort out what winning means here. So let's say that you're more verbally fluent than your partner and more treacherous. So you can win. That doesn't mean you're right, first of all. Winning when you're wrong is a really bad idea. Because then you think you're right. And you're not. And then maybe the person can see things you can't, but can't verbalize them quite as well. Well, you might want to listen. Just there's the possibility that they're trying to tell you how not to run headlong into a brick wall. There's some possibility of that. And so maybe you even have to help them formulate. It's like, okay, I don't get exactly what you're saying. I don't get exactly why you're annoyed. I'm not sure exactly what you want me to do to change it. Let's get this clear. And then I'm going to think about it. Like, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. I'm going to see if possibly you're right. I'm not going to roll over, because I would rather you weren't right. I'm not going to change. But I am going to listen. I would rather not run headlong into a brick wall if I don't have to. And so that's the idea with the conversation. So in Genesis, one of the things God has Adam do first. So God makes the world by speaking. Okay, so that's the first thing to think about. You're supposed to think in a sophisticated way about this. The idea is that there's some integral relationship between communication and the structure of being. It's part of the role that consciousness plays in the world, whatever that role is. Language takes the chaos and makes it into things. And so God has Adam name all the animals. They're not even really real until they have names. Well, let's say that you're having a rough patch in your relationship and you don't know why. It's unnameable. Is it real? Well, yeah. It's manifesting itself in a physiological discomfort. Then you talk about it and you name it. It goes from this blurry thing that's kind of potential, it goes snap. And then it's this thing. That's a horrible thing. It's like a little poisonous thing, but it's not a whole foggy cloud of potential poison. It's like this little sharp poison thing. And then you think, okay, it's real. It's a little monster. It's little, at least. And now probably we can do something about it, if we can admit to it. So it's this precision. Because the unnameable is far more terrifying than the nameable. No matter how terrible the actuality is, it's rarely as terrible as your imagination. Because your imagination, like, it's an old thing. It's seen a lot of terrible things in the history of life. It can put monsters everywhere. And so it's almost always better it might be better without exception to name the thing, no matter how terrible it is. And if you can't name it, what that means is you're telling yourself that you're so terrified that you can't bring your attention to bear on it. You're the loser, instantly. If it's so terrifying that you cannot face it, it's won. The worst way of demonizing people is to not be able to say anything about them, because then God only knows what. They're unspeakable. Bring everything out of the realm of the unspeakable. Freedom of speech, that's the worship of the logos in many ways. That's a very deep idea in our culture. The deepest idea of our culture is the logos is creative. And what it makes is good. That's God at the beginning of time. That's the idea. Is that to bring things out of the murk is a good thing. You don't mess with that, man. Not unless you want murk. Don't mess with that. It's the most sacred principle of Western civilization. One of the things that's happened in our society is that we seem to have concluded that strong men are dangerous. And that's partly because we think Western culture is a tyrannical patriarchy, and the only reason you get to the top is because you misuse power. So all the men who are at the top of the hierarchy are all misusing their power, and they're all tyrannical. And all the guys who have the aim and ambition to achieve that are just tyrants in training. That's sort of the basic attitude that we have towards our own culture and towards young men now. Everything about that is pathological and inexcusable and shameful. You know, I used to watch kids skateboard. I liked watching those kids. I like watching skateboarders do those crazy things. Because they're trying to become competent. They're facing danger. They don't want the damn protective gear. It's like, no. I don't want to wear a helmet. I want to expose myself to this danger. It's not that I'm stupid. And the kids are often shooed away. It's like, wait a sec. They're practicing being courageous. They're practicing mastering something in the face of danger. Don't bother children when they're skateboarding. Don't bother children when they're skateboarding. Don't bother children. Don't bother children. Don't bother children when they're skateboarding. Don't bother children when they're skateboarding. Don't bother children when they're skateboarding. Don't bother children. Don't bother children. Don't bother children when they're skateboarding. A lot of the rebellious behavior of young men in particular, which is very frowned upon in the schools. It's like, that's toxic masculinity. You know, that horrid phrase. It's like, leave those damn kids alone. About 10 years ago in Toronto, they changed the insurance rules governing the playgrounds. Parents had raised money for these damn playgrounds. There was nothing wrong with them. They tore them all out. 2 weeks before school started, there was nothing but dirt and gravel. I saw the kids on top of the school because they needed some danger. Don't bother children when they're skateboarding. Don't bother children when they're skateboarding. Don't bother children. Don't bother children. Don't bother children when they're skateboarding. Don't bother children when they're skateboarding. Don't bother children when they're skateboarding. Don't bother children. Don't bother children. Don't bother children when they're skateboarding. You go see a gymnast, and like the gymnast does a flawless routine. Everybody claps like mad. The judges say 9.9. And then the next person comes up and they're screwed. It's like 9.9.
About no guru, no method, no teacher, just you and me and nature in the garden. I think that's actually where it's at. So what I do, I'm a meme spreader. What what I do? I'm a meme spreader. What I do? I'm a meme spreader. Meme spreader. A meme replicator. A meme is a terrible thing to waste. A meme is a terrible thing to waste. A meme is a terrible thing to waste. And the purpose of these teaching things is to turn you into fellow replicators of the meme. Of the meme. You should go forth and tell other people, tell other people, tell other people, go forth and tell other people, tell other people, tell other people, and copy it into their head, copy it into their head, copy it into their head, and this meme will spread. So what I do, I'm a meme spreader. What I do, I'm a meme spreader. What I do, I'm a meme spreader. Meme spreader. A meme replicator. Because we cannot evolve faster than our language. The edge of being is the edge of meaning. And somehow we have to push the edge of meaning. We have to extend it. Because if we appear to be confronted by insoluble problems, it's because we have the wrong language for dealing with this problem. You learn that with computers. Certain languages are good for certain kinds of problems. We have to constantly evolve language and push it forward. So what I do, I'm a meme spreader. What I do, I'm a meme spreader. What I do, I'm a meme spreader. Meme spreader. A meme replicator. The way I think of the psychedelics is they are catalysts to the imagination. They were back 100,000 years ago. The imagination, which was just this glimmering, this iridescence on the surface of ape cognition, was under the influence of the reciprocal feedback of self-reflection that is created by watching your own mind. Watching your own mind. Watching your own mind. Watching your own mind. Because it has suddenly become interesting, because it has suddenly been flooded by a psychoactive amine. That iridescence has been coaxed into language, art, architecture, music, poetry, the whole ball of wax. But now we know these things. We can uncover the secret of our origin. I'm very keen for the notion of what I call the archaic revival. And the archaic revival is this overarching metaphor that is the way for us to go to save our necks at this point. When a culture gets into trouble, instinctively what it does is it goes back through its own past until it finds a moment where things to make sense. And then it brings that moment forward into the present. The archaic revival brings that moment forward into the present. The archaic revival brings that moment forward into the present. The archaic revival brings that moment forward into the present. When medieval Christianity no longer made sense to a major percentage of the people of Western Europe, the intellectuals of that time instinctively reached backwards into the past, looking for a stable model, and finally they reached the golden age of Periclean Athens. And there they found Plato, Aristotle, the dramatists, and they created classicism. Classicism was brought to birth in the 1400s, 2,000 years after the death of Plato. We are the children of this classical revival, which we call the Renaissance. Our theories of law, our theories of government, our notion of justice, all drawn from classical Greek and Roman models, brought back from the dead 500 years ago by a bunch of Italian investment bankers who thought this was a good model to hang their civilization on. Bring that moment forward into the present. The archaic revival. Bring that moment forward into the present. The archaic revival. Bring that moment forward into the present. The archaic revival. Bring that moment forward into the present. The archaic revival. So we must now reach far back into time for a new cultural model. Our crisis is so great that we have to reach back to the high Paleolithic, to the moment immediately before the invention of agriculture and the creation of the dominator ego. In spite of my nature boy thrust in most contexts, I'm very interested in virtual reality and the idea of making the imagination explicit or interiorizing the exterior world. One vision that I've had of the kind of future utopia is it opens on a world which looks like our world of 10,000 years ago. People live tribally, they are physically perfect, they're naked, they want for nothing, they appear to have no material culture whatsoever. Then when you shift your point of view so that you're inside one of these people's heads, you discover that when they close their eyes, there are menus hanging in space in front of them. And by glancing at these menus with a certain intensity, they are able to make their way into a culture that is entirely three-dimensionally present for them, but which nowhere impinges on the world of three-dimensional space. Sort of the idea that you could have the Vatican Library installed optionally when you have dental work. I don't think this is that far-fetched. I mean, a lot of money is going toward this. Money can be made from this. We have to figure out, unless we're ready to, hang the rascals, then we're going to have to figure out some way to make money out of saving the world, saving the world, saving the world, saving the world, saving the world. We're going to have to figure out some way to make money out of saving the world, 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 saving the world. And I think these entertainment technologies are the way to go. I think that what we should all be trading in in 15 or 20 years from now is ideas. And ideas should be worth more than anything. History is just a 25,000-year dash from the trees to the starship. History is just a 25,000-year dash from the trees to the starship. And while it's going on, it's wild and woolly. But it only lasts like that. And then you're in the starship. 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 Because we are like bacteria or something in the shortness of our lifespan. To us, 25,000 years, you can get lost in the middle of that and you can't see either end. But from the point of view of a species, it's just instantaneous. History is just a 25,000-year dash from the trees to the starship. History is just a 25,000-year dash from the trees to the starship. 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 You know, this thing happened 65 million years ago. A very large object collided with the Earth. Everything on this planet, larger than a chicken, died. Some people think in a single moment. But what's peculiar is there appears to have been a major dieback of species underway before the impact. That in the million years preceding the impact, there was some kind of echo crisis on the planet. And then this asteroid struck. You know, the dinosaurs that we find are the lumbering, enormous ones, but it's always agreed that there were a vast number of small-boned, gray-seal dinosaurs that were much smaller. Is it possible there was a breakout of intelligence? Is it possible that there was an intelligent species of a reptilian sort that was actually evolving a technical civilization, which then caused this dieback of species? History is just a 25,000-year dash from the trees to the starship. History is just a 25,000-year dash from the trees to the starship. 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 Whenever you have intelligent life in the presence of large explosions, a safe bet is that the intelligent life is responsible for the large explosions. It may be that there was war in heaven 60 million years ago.
Akira.
One scenario for solving our problem is a mass migration into the past. We could literally dump this whole scene and go 100 million years into the past of the planet, then set up there in a confined zone. If it were only 10,000 years deep, it would never show in any fossil record. If we held ourselves to a 10,000 year wide window, that's such a brief period of time and so long ago that we would basically just appear to have disappeared. I think this is a haunted planet, and we are a haunted species. I think this is a haunted planet, and we are a haunted species. Every solid body in the solar system is heavily cratered. I think this is a haunted planet, and we are a haunted species. Some of these craters are planet smashers. There is considerable and ever-increasing evidence that the cosmic neighborhood is fairly unstable. Is it possible that biology is somehow prescient, that biology somehow exists in eternity and knows the fate of the planet, and that what we are is a desperate strategy of escape, and that the planet actually can sense the possibility of a complete life-destroying asteroidal impact? I think this is a haunted planet, and we are a haunted species. I think this is a haunted planet, and we are a haunted species. Every solid body in the solar system is heavily cratered. I think this is a haunted planet, and we are a haunted species. A species, a bipedal monkey with binocular vision, has been led into the antechamber of nature's secrets in order to build machineries and unleash energies sufficient to either deflect that incoming object or flee the planet in anticipation of it. I think life is tremendously tenacious and has an immense capacity to organize itself to meet any crisis, provided it knows it's coming. There are scars on this planet, enormous scars. There's a scar 1.5 billion years old on the Canadian shield that is twice the size of the lunar crater Copernicus. Now, what is going on? What is going on? What is going on? What is going on? Now, what is going on? What is going on? What is going on? What is going on? This thing that came down 50,000 years ago out near Flagstaff, Arizona. That was a tiny object. It was something like 30 meters across. It was moving 9 times the speed of a rifle bullet. It was 6 miles into the earth in the first second of impact. Everything within 800 miles died instantly, and this was a nothing burger, this thing. An object 500 meters across the planet would ring like a gong for 10,000 years. The thing which killed the dinosaurs, they now believe they have the impact point. At the time of the impact, the entire area was a shallow ocean. But what I find eerie about the location of this impact point is 65 million years afterwards, on this exact spot, a civilization will arise obsessed with the end of time. A civilization will arise obsessed with the end of time and determined to give a date to it. It's within 110 miles of Chichen Itza. It's near Zebel Chaltun. It's right in the heart of classic Maya country. What is going on? 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 It's very easy to smooth it all out and say, that the Pentagon runs it all and so forth and so on. But once you start digging, the world is a labyrinth, a sponge of interconnected labyrinthine interstices, the weirdest connections. Who knew who and what they were doing about it. And then, these reports that come in, and some are false and some are true, but the sum total of it all is to paint a picture of excruciating weirdness. Excruciating weirdness. Excruciating weirdness. People are just not pushing the right buttons. I guarantee you take 5 dried grams of psilocybin in silent darkness in your own living room on a Saturday night. You will see things no one has ever seen before and no one will ever see again. These things are real. These things are real. They have existential validity. They have the power to move hearts and change lives if we can but bring them back into the domain of the group mind, of the tribal campfire. We are surrounded by oceans of alien beauty, alien intent, bizarre ideas. I'm convinced that these things which the tykes offer in the DMT holding pen are idea systems. Ultimately, the time wave, which took me 4 years to create and requires computer assistance and all this stuff, it was just one of those things. They have closets full of this stuff. And they just pull it out and show it to you and take it away. Oh, you like that? Try this. How about this? Each one of these things stretches the monkey mind to its limits. To its limits. Each one of these things stretches the monkey mind to its limits. To its limits. I am a rationalist, and yet if you press into these weird zones, you can overcome what I call the trailer court syndrome. Crop circles are such fun. It is a wonderful example of my contention that the world is made of language. Because whatever the crop circles are, what they are is glyphs of some sort. I mean, they are designed to be seen. It would be absurd to maintain that someone was trying not to be seen. So these crop circles are to be looked at, and then radiating out from the act of looking at them, reality ripples. Reality ripples. Reality ripples like air above a desert highway. No one seems to think it's weird that all of these Earth Mysteries people in England, this tremendous mystery just happens to be within a 3-hour drive of their front door. I mean, why isn't it happening in the steppes of Central Asia? Obviously, it seems to me, it is to be seen by the very people who would then offer an explanation of it. Well, now, Jacques Vallée is the person who pioneered in the study of flying saucers. He said the way to understand flying saucers is don't ask who's inside or where do they come from. Ask what effect are they having. If you assume they are succeeding in what they want to do, then watch what they do and you will see what their purpose is. See what their purpose is. Okay, so what effect are the crop circles having? They are a magnet for the fringe establishment of the British Isles to come out of the woodwork and proclaim the imminence of some great event. And they have come more and more out on this limb. What I speculated to Rupert was that MI5, which is British intelligence, it's possible that they could actually view the New Age as a resurgence of paganism that threatens the Christian establishment of Anglican England. And so what they have done is they've created a disinformation program. They will lure all these people out onto this limb where they are all saying, couldn't be done by human beings, absolutely beyond the power of science to explain. And then they will reveal a team of MI5 folks who say, watch, we'll do it for world TV. You people are all flakes. You should never have gained the power in this society that you have, and now you do have to go find honest work. So then we came up with a yet more elaborate theory, which I somewhat prefer. The only country that has really taken an interest in these crop circles, other than the English themselves, are the Japanese. This has gotten immense coverage in Japan, in the popular press. When you go to these crop circles, the number of Japanese is astonishing. MITI, which is the Ministry of Trade and Industry, is obviously Western mind and how it relates to the manipulation of certain symbols. Because they are in charge of marketing and advertising and creating a marketing psychology in Japan. So what I think we're dealing with here is a ultra-clandestine team of ninja stem snappers who pose as Japanese tourists and television crews and so forth, and then at the drop of a hat can flash into this Zen stem snapping mode, create these things, and the press that it generates and the discussion provides a very deep index into the English mind. Notice how eerily appealing to the English mind this is, and it's possible that you can extend this to the cattle mutilations of a few years ago in the Midwest. The relationship of cattle mutilations in the lonely western prairie under a crescent moon, the relationship of that image to the American mystique of the lonesome cowboy and the gunfight at the OK Corral and all that is eerily similar to the relationship of the English mind to its earth mysteries out there on the Salisbury Plain. It's a human agency, and that therefore it's some kind of a disinformation project. To the emerging messages from the telluric depths of the suffering earth. Hey, maybe it's happening, but I was raised in the tradition of Occam's razor, which says hypotheses should not be multiplied without necessity, and I saw no necessity of reaching out to that. I should make it clear, I don't believe this stuff. I don't believe this stuff. I don't believe this stuff.
Akira.
The Dawn.